DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, do not start a podcast. Yes, you heard me. Do not launch a podcast. Do not start a podcast. Do not conceptualize a podcast. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Today, I'm going to tell you why you should not have, start, or operate a podcast. Now, as you probably know, actually, I'm pretty sure you know, lots of people are jumping into the content creation game these days. There are more people creating content than I even knew. A lot of them tend to move their content. They tend to jump into the YouTube space more than the podcasting space necessarily. I see a lot of people with YouTube channels that may not necessarily have podcasts, but they are on the content creation continuum. Let's just call it that. Just yesterday, I saw two referees that I remember from watching boxing matches. They have a podcast together. Two boxing referees have a podcast together where I guess they talk about boxing. I saw Michael Irvin, former NFL player. He has a YouTube channel now. I mean, YouTube. Did I say podcast? I meant to say YouTube. They have a YouTube. Some people call their YouTube channels podcasts anyway, but people are getting into this content creation game heavy. Damn near everybody who's a known person is in the content creation space right now. And there are several reasons for that. One of them is we have seen that a lot of people who are known through working in traditional media have gone and created independent media, something that they have complete ownership over, and they've been able to establish themselves there. So it's kind of a fallback to working in traditional media, because if you get fired from NBC or ESPN or CBS, now you can always fall back on a platform that you do own, and you're not just out there, twisting in the wind by yourself with nothing to do and no way of reaching your audience. So it makes sense that people are jumping in it for that reason. That's the business side of it. Then there's the reason of just wanting to put your name out there, put your name, image, and likeness and your voice out there. I think a lot of people are just interested in putting themselves out there on the internet. Not so much for the business reasons. Hopefully some business may come from it for a lot of people, but I think a lot of people just want to express themselves. And because many of us are now immersed in this era of putting all your thoughts and your ideas and your visuals and your dances out there on the internet through the phone, and it's so common for everyone to do it, then everyone's doing it. I think that's more of a reason than it is a business reason. Some people are doing it for business, but I don't think most people are. I think most people are doing it just because it's a common and popular thing to do, and everyone wants to get their voice heard. And what social media and the internet in general has done is democratize publishing. Is that anybody can publish and put whatever out that you want to, from a serious podcast about growth and development like this one to doing silly TikTok dances to get a whole bunch of likes, which a lot of more people do that than do this. So this is the game that we're in, the world that we're in. And one of the reasons is, as I just explained, it's very easy to do it. So from the comfort of your own couch, using your smartphone, you can start creating content in a written, audio, or video format. And kids these days are growing up looking to be influencers, YouTubers, and TikTokers, and podcasters, rather than being firemen, police officers, governors, or what's the other thing that people used to want to be? Something that required you actually going out into the world and actually doing something. Now people want to do something from their phone. So today's not to discuss whether that's a good or bad thing, but what I will discuss is why you might actually not want to get into this content creation game. And I'll use podcasting as a frame, but you can apply this to any form. We can apply this to TikToking, YouTubing, or whatever else you would like to name. Point number one, topic once again here today is why you should not launch a podcast. Number one, you do not have something to say that you absolutely cannot not say. You do not have something to say that you absolutely cannot not say it. The reason why I, Dre Baldwin, started publishing content is because I had things to say that I could not hold in and not put them out. I knew I had a whole lot of things to say and a lot of angles and ways of looking at the world and ways of looking at things that occur that I knew was different than how most people saw things. So when I saw the internet come about, let's just call it Web 2.0, which is basically around the time when you could put out your own stuff, where people could create and put out their own message on their own platforms. not their own platforms, but their own, behind their own name, image, and likeness, such as getting on a social media platform and saying whatever you want on your profile. When I saw that, I said, oh, this is the perfect medium from which I can do exactly what I just explained to you. Now, did I know when I first started putting out content that all the things that I would eventually say would get said? Of course not, because a lot of things I eventually have said hadn't even happened yet, and I didn't know they were going to happen, but I knew I had a unique angle from which to explain my perspectives, which meant anything that did happen in the future, I would have a unique way of talking about it that would be different from most people, which has proven to be true. This is borne out to be true. So I knew I had something to say, and I had a way of saying it that was different from anything else that was already out there. And that's why I started publishing. This is also the reason why I continue to publish. And why I turn on the microphone, camera, or turn on Google Docs and put out the material I put out is because I believe I'm adding substance to the conversation. Now, whether you agree with what I'm adding to the conversation or not is a different story. But am I adding to the conversation and putting it out there in a way that is different than what others are saying, or in a way that's different than what you have heard, or maybe even different from the way you personally have thought before you hear it? I believe the answer is yes, because if I wasn't doing that, then I would not continue to publish. I would never even start it. So there are things that I want to say in certain ways that I want to say them because I believe nobody else is doing it, at least not the way that I would do it. Thus, as I just said, I'm adding something new into the conversation, adding something new to the marketplace. If you don't feel this way about what you're going to do, then I strongly suggest that you not partake. If you're not adding to the conversation, all you're doing is contributing to the noise. Those are only two things you can do when you create content. You add to the conversation or you contribute to the noise. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have 1 million people consuming your stuff. But if your stuff is consumed by 1 million people, are they going to see it as, okay, this person is adding to the conversation, or this person is just saying a bunch of the same things that everybody else is already saying? Now, you're going to be on one side of that or the other. Now, do you know how the general public is going to respond to you? No. But you can ask yourself, when you're thinking about or recording whatever it is that you want to say, what am I saying here that hasn't already been said? How am I presenting this in a way that's different from anything else that's out there? Now, you also may ask, well, how do I know? Look around the conversations you have and the people who you do talk to and the people who you do listen to. How are they talking about things and how are you talking about them? How are they formulating their thoughts and opinions and how are you formulating yours? Is it any different from them? If the answer is no, you're probably sounding like everybody else out there, because your friends and your acquaintances are usually a good sample size of what the wider world, how the wider world is talking about most things too. But if your opinions and views and insights are unique, even from the people around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, etc., then you may have something. You may be on to something. And this is what I mean. So even when I was in high school and in college, I would listen to my peers and my friends talk about certain things upon which maybe we had a similar opinion and we looked at things the same way. But my way of articulating, whether it was in my mind or if I was verbally saying it, the exact thoughts that everybody else had, even if we agreed, was different than the way they were doing it. So I said, if I can get this out here, I think I can help people explain my way of thinking, not necessarily because I'm trying to convince them to see things my way. It's just that I believe people would understand this if I put it out. This makes sense. It made sense to me. It always made sense to me. So let me get this out to some other people. And when the internet came about, I knew it was for me. I knew this is the place that I was going to plant my flag. Now, again, did we know social media was coming, podcasting, artificial intelligence, and all the things we have access to today? No, nobody knew that was coming. At least I didn't know it was coming. But when I saw it, I knew this was the place I was going to be, and whatever ended up happening. And here we are. And we're only getting started, folks. So understand that this content creation game is not for everyone, even though everyone probably thinks it's for everyone. But it's fine that it's not for everyone, as I've already started to explain. Same way that not everybody should be into car manufacturing, recording albums, or designing clothing. Everything is not for everybody. These days, again, since everything is so easily accessible, you see a lot of people jumping into things that they never should have jumped into simply because it's so easy to get in and there are no barriers to entry. And there being no barriers to entry is a good thing, because now we can allow everybody the opportunity to put themselves out there and prove it. But having no barriers to entry also becomes a bad thing, because now you get this crowded ocean of a bunch of noise and nonsense, and people are jumping into things not necessarily because they have anything of value to add, but simply because it's so easy. And if it wasn't so easy, most people who are creating content wouldn't be creating content. If you had to actually jump through some hoops to create content, there'd be 70% fewer content creators out there today than there are, simply because there were some barriers to entry. But with no barriers, the trade-off of having no barriers, that you get a lot of bullshit that you have to cut through in order to get to the substance. Point number 2, today's topic, once again, is why you should not launch a podcast. Number 2, You are not ready to commit to the long game of building an audience and building trust within that audience. So if you just take the knots away from there and understand this is what you need to do if you're going to create content. You have to commit to the long game of building an audience and building trust with that audience. That takes time. Trust is built through time and some form of investment, money, attention, energy, focus into a relationship. It's very easy to get a lot of attention in the short term these days. If you choose the right topic and the right audience for that topic, you can get a lot of people paying attention to what you're saying. This morning, for example, I was doing my live stream and I was talking about some things that happened around the NFL and around the NFL draft. And at one point I had about 500 people in there concurrently, which is a pretty good number for me when I do my live streams, given my style and approach. There are other people who normal for them is 10,000 people, and other people normal for them is 100 people. It's very easy to get a whole lot of attention in the short term, depending on what you're talking about and why and where you do it. At the same time, speaking about myself, I created content. I've been doing live streaming every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, since August of 2024. And I've been doing it all the way through up until now when you're listening to this. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern, whichever social platform you prefer. They all have live streaming capabilities. I'm live on all 7 of them at the same time at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. And that's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Rumble, and X. The thing is, the reason that I'm able to get my audience up to where it is, well, I don't really know what would have happened had this been my first live stream today, but I've been doing this live stream consistently, as I just told you, for all this time. There were times I was doing a live stream and I might get a maximum of, at one time, maybe 30 people in the room, maybe maximum of 100. There are times I've had a couple thousand. There are times I had 150. But the point is, I just continue to publish. I've always continued to publish, even when my material was not getting a lot of engagement or social media metric numbers, whatever numbers you want to say, vanity metrics, not getting a lot of likes, not getting a lot of views, not getting a lot of comments. I've never stopped publishing. Now, the way that things get published and the approach we use to get things seen, heard, and absorbed, those can change, but the act of publishing has never changed. That's one of the reasons why I've been able to build an audience over the last 20 years online, is I never stopped publishing. Some of you are consuming this and you haven't listened to my material. You listened to my material sometime back in the day, then you stopped for a while and then you came back and I'm still here. I just keep publishing. And if you're not ready to do that, then you shouldn't get in this game, because all you're going to do is end up wasting your time, because the time that you put in which you are doing it is going to get wasted because you don't stick around long enough to reap the long-term benefits of consistency, long-term consistency. And again, social media has rigged its algorithms on certain platforms for certain reasons and for certain audiences. You can figure out which ones at which time and for who, because it varies. But they've rigged their algorithms such that when someone is relatively new at putting material out, the apps will, let's just say, what will they do? They will favor you and give you a quick, big shot of dopamine to further incentivize you to keep publishing. Now, why do they care if you get a whole bunch of views and likes and comments on one of your early posts on a social media platform, as opposed to someone who's been posting every day for 8 years, someone like myself, this has been 20, but let's just say 8 years. Why do they care that you, the new person who's been publishing for 8 minutes, gets a whole lot of engagement on your post, but they don't try to make sure I get a lot of engagement on mine, even though I've been publishing consistently for 8 years? The reason is that if they give you that big dopamine hit up front, you're more likely to stick around and keep publishing. Now, why do they care if you keep publishing or not? And again, what about me, who's been publishing all the time? Why don't they care about whether I do it? Well, first of all, let's answer the second question. Answer to the second question is they already know that I'm going to publish, so they don't need to incentivize me by giving me or rigging the algorithm to give me more people to see my stuff than normally would, simply because they know I'm going to keep publishing, because past actions are the number one precursor of future actions. Now, the brand new person, the app doesn't know if you're going to stick around. So they have to incentivize you to want to stick around by getting you a whole lot of likes and comments and views when you first start doing a thing. Now, if you're still getting all those months later or years later, then that's a whole different story. Now, why do they care that you get all of that and stick around? Because the longer you stick around, the more content you publish, the higher the likelihood that the algorithm shows your stuff to other people who further engage with it, and they stay on the app. And the longer everybody stays on the app, the more money the social media applications make. So anything that they can do to incentivize people like you to publish and keep publishing, they're going to do it so that you are encouraged to keep trying. Because if you start out and you only got one viewer and you do 10 videos and each one of them only gets one like, eventually you're probably going to quit. Most people will quit before they even get to 10 posts. But you get 100 likes, so one of your early posts goes viral, well, you're going to keep going because you're waiting for that chance to go viral again. There's a study that was done with, I don't know what animal it was, but let's just say it was hamsters, that when they would vary the prize that the hamster got for pushing a button, that the hamster would just keep pushing the button over and over and over again, because even though it didn't know, like they would do, sometimes they would give the hamster a prize every time it pushed the button. Then there was another hamster, they would give it a prize every third time it pushed the button. So it would know every 3 times I want to get the prize. Then they had another one and they just gave it a prize at a variable rate. So in other words, the hamster didn't know how many times it had to push the button to get the prize, but eventually it would get the prize. The hamster that had the variable rate was the most persistent one. And well, of course, the one that got it every time, they would push it. But between the two that it was not random, but scheduled. And then the one that was random, it pushed it more often. And it was more persistent in sticking with it because it had kind of like that lottery feel. I know it's going to happen, but I don't know when it's going to happen. So if you know something's going to happen and you know when it's going to happen, eventually it may get a little boring to you. But when you don't know, the excitement's there. And that little hit of excitement keeps you going. That's exactly what the social media apps do. So it's difficult to build, actually, let me back up. It's very easy to get a lot of attention in the short term, again, with the right topic and the right thing for the right audience. It's much more difficult to build an audience and maintain it over the long term, as, again, whatever was hot for you 6 months ago might not be hot for you today, depending on what it is. Now, there are certain things that always sell. For example, I did an episode not too long ago telling you about the Instagram ass models. That was episode 3203. All right, topics like sex will always sell. So if you're selling any form of sex, whether you are explicitly calling it that or not, if you are suggesting it, then you're going to get a certain amount of attention just because of what you're selling and who may be consuming it. But other subjects, whatever's hot today is not going to be hot all the time. So it's really going to come down to you and your ability to deliver substance, not the subject itself. So riding the wave is fun when there is a wave, but eventually a wave subsides. For example, of all the live streams that I've done, the one that I feel like I had, actually not feel like, but I know I had the most people on watching all at the same time was the day after the 2024 election, when I titled that live stream Donald Trump Part 2. And I had a whole lot of people in there listening to what I said. And I'm bringing it up because Donald Trump just won the election the day before. But I can't talk about Donald Trump Part 2 every day because eventually that story kind of goes cold. I got to bring something else and some other form of substance to the table. So again, riding the wave is cool when there is a wave, but when there's no wave, what are you going to do? Can you create a wave? Do you have the substance to create a wave yourself? Understand that building a true relationship, ladies and gentlemen, with your audience requires you consistently publishing and consistently delivering on your promise, i.e. being the person that they expect you to be. And I think that's more about you and your style than it is about the subject, because subjects change. Listen to this show right here. I'm talking about different subjects every day, but my style of delivery and my way of explaining things is the consistent piece of it. It's not the topic itself. I've talked about a lot of different things here, from personal and professional development stuff to social stuff to racial stuff to sexual stuff to relationship stuff to leadership stuff to communication stuff. The only constant is me. Everything else can possibly change. You have no idea what tomorrow's episode is going to be, unless I tell you I'm doing a multi-part series, of which this is not one. But you show up because the style and the approach of the person who's giving it. That's what builds consistency. So again, riding waves is fun, but eventually the wave subsides. So can you keep people excited after the wave goes away? If you make a promise at the beginning and don't follow through on that promise, you actually hurt the trust that the audience has with you rather than staying neutral. They don't stay neutral. It hurts the trust because you brought them in with one thing, but then you gave them something else. I've read about on certain algorithms, for example, on YouTube, this is where it's probably most pronounced, is that if you are known as, for example, putting out content on origami, and then all of a sudden you make some content about NASA space rockets, and that NASA space rockets content gets a lot of engagement, now a bunch of people are going to start joining your channel, and it's going to get recommended to people in the search feed based on that NASA space rockets video, even though most of your content is not that. And that can hurt the overall performance of your YouTube channel. It's something that did happen to me, as a matter of fact, because I used to put out a bunch of basketball related stuff. And then when I stopped doing basketball related stuff, it still was going fine for a while. And then it got worse and it seemed to not be getting better. So this is when I flipped over to using a different YouTube channel, because it seems like the algorithm decided, okay, we don't want to show this channel anymore simply because I put out too many different things on different subjects. Possibly. I mean, we don't know the actual reason. We may never really know, but that's the theory that we're working with as of now. The whole point is whatever you bring to the table with people, that's what they're generally going to expect from you. So you should, if you're going to deliver something different, do it in a different space. Simple as that. So don't have people expecting something from you, not deliver on it, because then they're less likely to trust you moving forward. And then that hurts the long term of your game and your brand. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why you should not launch a podcast. Number 3, you do not have a clear angle nor a clear audience to deliver or to whom you will deliver. Clear angle. If you're going to start a show, you need to know who you're talking to, what they want, what they're interested in, what they will actively respond to or what they're already responding to, and what they may respond to in the future. Now, do you need to have all these answers for sure and be 100% accurate? No, and that's pretty much impossible. But in business terms, this is known as market research. You want to come as close as you possibly can to knowing who your audience is before you start. There's a story of this guy who was opening a chiropractic office in a town. And in the months leading up to the opening of his office, he went door to door around the entire neighborhood, just knocking on people's doors and telling them who he was, what he was doing, and asking them what they would want in a chiropractic practice in the neighborhood should one open. And because he had done so much market research, he knew exactly what his people needed or what his community needed. So by the time his shop opened, he was overbooked. Why? Because he had already gone and done the market research and found out what people wanted. I remember being in a coaching program, this guy named Alex Sharfin, who's, I haven't heard from Alex in a while. He shut down his podcast, and I think he might even shut down his company a while ago. But one of the things that he said when I was in his coaching program was that you want to do these things called interviewing. You want to call it interviews of your customers. He called them avatar interviews. You're going to interview your customers, find out, and these are people who are already in your audience. They already know, like, and trust you. They've already been following your stuff, maybe even buying your stuff. You want to interview them and find out what it is that they're buying into, what they like about you, how much they know about you. And one of the things that Alex said about that is that if you talk to 20 people in your audience, you're going to have a really solid grasp of what are the commonalities amongst the people who are really fans of your stuff. If you talk to 50 people, then you will almost know like the back of your hand exactly what your audience wants and why they're drawn into you. And if you talk to 100, you're going to know more than 99% of people in your space about your audience and exactly what they want. The point is, many people are unwilling to do the market research to find out exactly who their target audience is. Therefore, your shots keep missing the mark, so to speak. Now, some things that must be considered is that not everybody who consumes your stuff is your target audience. Only you, as the marketer and the entrepreneur or the creator, knows who exactly your target audience is, because your target audience can change over time, and you may have different target audiences for different messages and different, let's say, products or services. For example, when I was online for my first 10 years, 2005 to 2015, my target audience was a 13 to 24-year-old aspiring male basketball player. That is not my target audience anymore. Target audience these days is a small business owner who's offering some form of professional service business who's making 6 to 7 figures in their business. Completely different audience of people. And some people in the first audience would never be in the second audience. Some people in the second audience were never in the first audience. So I could put out a message today that could resonate with the basketball audience, depending on what I want to talk about. I could also put out another message that could resonate with the audience that I just described. And the message does not always overlap. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. When I talk about mindset, that can apply to a basketball player, same way it can apply to a small business owner making $500K a year. But it depends on who I'm talking to. And depends on who I'm trying to reach with my message. Because at the end of that message, my call to action could be go get this $5 training program, or go sign up for this coaching course or this coaching access. So 2 different offers. So you need to know who your target audience is, and you need to decide who do I want to target my message to. Do I want to target my message to the people over here, or the people over here, or the people over there? Even though all 3 may be interested in something that you have to offer, you can't serve all 3 of them at the same time with the same message. So you have to choose. Who are you targeting? Again, this is market research. Who do you want to reach? Easiest and most seamless form of market research is to serve the people who you are already serving, or people who are in a position where you used to be. The reason I was able to serve so well to the 13 to 24-year-old aspiring male basketball player is because I used to be that exact person. So it's very easy for me to give them exactly what they needed, because all I had to do was remember what I needed when I was in their shoes and just give them the thing that nobody ever gave me. So it's very easy for me to talk to them. Now, you do not necessarily need to talk to someone who is in the seat that you used to be in. And if you're going to talk to people who are in a seat that you've never been in, then you need to do the market research to find out what their actual challenges, needs, and desires are, because you don't know. You don't have the life experience to say, well, I know exactly what they need, because I was them. I knew that for basketball, Didn't know it so much when I got into other spaces and talked to other people. So I had to talk to more people and find out what exactly do they need. So those avatar interviews that I described, I've done those before. So I know exactly who my audience is, and I know exactly what they want. So again, it doesn't mean that you can't serve people who aren't living the life that you're living. You just have to do a little bit extra work or maybe a lot of extra work to get the knowledge of who they are. And if you haven't done this and you don't know who your audience is, why are you launching the show? I know exactly who I'm talking to when I do episodes of this show. I know exactly what they need, I know exactly what they want. I know exactly why they're listening. I know how people are finding out about the show, and I know how it's being consumed. Down to the detail, I know exactly how this is coming across. So what do you have to say? Who are you saying it to? And most importantly, who wants to hear it? You need to know the answers to these questions. That said, let's recap today's class, which is do not launch a podcast. And I'm using podcasting as a frame here, but it can apply to any form of content, and everybody's jumping in these days. So this is an important message that's very needed right now. Number one, you do not have something to say that you absolutely cannot not say. If there's something that's inside of you, it's just boiling over, and you have to put it out to the world because you need to make sure everybody hears it. That's one of the reasons why I created content to begin with. It's one of the reasons why I keep creating it to this day. If I get to the point that I don't feel that way, then I'll stop. Number two, you're not ready to commit to the long game of building an audience and the trust that comes with that audience. The long game commitment means you may be able to ride waves of something that's popular and hot and viral right now, but eventually you're going to have to replace that virality with the substance of who you are for an audience of people who are actually interested in that. Can you do that? And number three, you don't have a clear angle or clear audience to deliver or to whom you will deliver. You need to know exactly who your audience is, what they want, what they need, why they care, and what questions do they have that need to be answered, whether they know about them or not. That's your job as the person who's going to be positioning yourself as a leader by getting in front of them. You need to know all this so that they don't have to think about it. Make things easy for people. They're more likely to comply. That said, everyone, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. Let me walk you through step-by-step, strategically and systematically, how to take your game, your business, your personal life, your business life from where it is to where you want it to go. And let's do this quickly, not slowly. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. And also, if you have not engaged with the Dre GPT chatbot, it's available for free right now. Just go to dreallday.com/AI. Work on your game. Dre all